Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the Finance Committee. Today is Tuesday, April 2nd. We have two bills to hear. Senators, thank you for your patience as we waited for a quorum, and we do have a quorum. So I'd like to ask for President of the Senate, Senator Bill Ferguson, to come to the table, and Senator Salling. Okay, that's fine.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Finance Committee. I appreciate you taking this up so quickly and appreciate being joined by my colleague in the 6th District on the other side of the Key Bridge, who has been a great partner to work with along with the crisis that we've all experienced over the last week. I think the summary here is you don't know how much you miss until it's gone. And the Port of Baltimore is a historic engine for the state of Maryland that has always operated. That has always operated nearly at full capacity, even in the midst of COVID, in the midst when many other businesses were shut down or were trying to work remotely. There's no such thing as remotely unloading a ship. And throughout COVID, the port workers showed up, the truck drivers showed up. So when people were scared and weren't sure what this virus was, commerce kept moving because the workers at the Port of Baltimore and related small businesses kept the economy moving. Last week, we all were frankly traumatized by this truly extraordinary experience in which the Key Bridge is now sitting at the bottom of the Patapsco River. Yesterday, the senator from the 6th District and I had an opportunity to join the governor and federal officials with members of the ILA at the Dundalk Marine Terminal. They were there to hear about a timeline moving forward. While everyone wishes that we had a clear and exact timeline of what the future may hold, unfortunately, that is not something that is available right now. And as a result, the fear in the eyes of individuals who just want to go to work was very present. What we're doing here today with Senate Bill 1188 is trying to provide some modicum of protection and relief for the individuals and the small businesses and the port industries that rely on the everyday full operation of the Port of Baltimore. An important clarification here, and there are a pack of amendments that I will also mention that I want to thank the administration, the Moore Miller administration, and federal officials for such close work, as well as my delegate on the other side of the House and members from the 6th District that have been working very collaboratively on this. One of the things is that we've been talking about the port closure. The good news is the entire port is not closed. The operations are severely reduced because the channel is closed. And that's an important distinction because there are workers who are still able to do the important work of value-added manufacturing to the automobile industry and a number of other port-related functions. The key folks that are most impacted are those who rely on the everyday coming and goings of cargo ships into and out of the Port of Baltimore. And so until that channel is cleared, we will have severely disrupted operations. And that's what the focus is. It's not the closure, it is the severely reduced operations. This bill focuses on 3 specific areas, and then with the amendments that I'll describe just a couple other components. First and foremost, it's the individual employees. There are a number of workers at the port. Some are W-2 employees, others work for labor unions, and some are 1099 contracted employees. Because of the daily operations being disrupted, they don't have work today. A number of the ILA members were saying they have work through the week, but starting on Monday, the work dries up because the hours won't be there to load and unload ships. So what this allows the administration to do is have flexibility to provide an income replacement program that is temporary relief for as the channel gets cleared, there's a better opportunity for these workers to be able to put food on their table, pay their bills, pay their mortgage, knowing that the channel will get reopened and they will go back to work. The second is focusing on small businesses related to the port. We learned through COVID that sometimes it's more efficient to do direct support to the small businesses so that they can retain their employees, as opposed to having those small businesses lay off their employees, have them file for unemployment, file for other benefits, and then attempt to rehire them when the channel is reopened or when work resumes. And so if we can give direct subsidy to those small businesses in order to retain employees, it is a more efficient way of dealing with this temporary catastrophe. And then third, which is sort of the most flexible aspect of the program, is allowing the Department of Commerce, like we do with the Sunny Day account, to have some flexibility in negotiating with businesses that use the Port of Baltimore to make sure that when the channel is reopened and the businesses that rely on the port, that as they shift their operations to Norfolk or South Carolina and Charleston or to Newark and to New Jersey or New York, that when the channel is reopened, they don't get too comfortable being other places. We want them back at Baltimore. And so we want to have the possibility of an incentive program to make sure that when the channel is open, that business comes back to the Port of Baltimore so that it will thrive again. I want to turn to the amendments that members have access to. And again, want to thank the administration for working very quickly over the last few days to add some technical clarifying amendments to what was already incorporated in the bill to make sure that the programs functioned effectively. And there are 3 additional components. The first is to provide a fallen transportation workers scholarship fund for individuals and children of transportation workers who are tragically killed as a part of their work on state roads. This is an example of the 6 individuals who tragically lost their lives. I believe almost all of them were fathers and have young children. And this would avail those young children to the ability to have funds to access higher education down the line, knowing that that's only a small, a portion, exponentially small fractional portion of the pain that they are realizing because of this accident. The second addition is that we are suspending the requirement of the work requirement for those who access UI as a result of reduced operations at the port. We know that this is an extremely temporary relocation, or excuse me, a restriction on operations. When the channel is cleared, our hope is that these folks can go immediately back to work. We are also the administration has requested to increase the bonding authority of the Maryland Transportation Authority so that the state can move more swiftly at the right time to rebuild the Key Bridge. And this is important because we don't know how quickly the federal government will act. And when this happened in 2007 in Minnesota and a bridge collapse happened there, Congress acted within 3 days to provide $250 million towards the reconstruction of the bridge in Minnesota. We're at 7 days. The Biden administration and agencies have done a phenomenal job of expressing they're willing to help. The challenge that we have is that it's going to require a bill through Congress, and there is at least initial indications that the upcoming legislation related to foreign aid may incorporate some of the provisions related to the Port of Baltimore and Maryland emergency measures. We'll see, but until we know and have certainty from the federal government, we are hopeful, but we have to be able to act to sustain and protect Marylanders' interests. And then finally, technical changes that for the administration have flexibility to administer the program. With that, I just want to thank this committee's time and attention and each individual senator for your attention to this important matter, and thank my colleague from the 6th District for his assistance as we've been putting this together, and thank the administration for their work. So thank you, Madam Chair, and urge a favorable report as amended at the appropriate time.
Senator President, are you going to stay for a few minutes?
I can.
We'd like to ask Senator
Absolutely.
Salling to testify, and then we'll have questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe. Thank you, Senator Salling.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair and Committee. For the record, I'm Senator Johnny Ray Salling, the 6th District of Baltimore County. As we know, this is a time of necessary help. It's important that we realize the national and international importance of this in commerce. Going out and meeting with those employees yesterday and have an opportunity just to speak with them and talk with them. And I want to thank our Senate President for his leadership, but I also want to thank, Madam Chair, the leadership of our Senate, of our delegations that are working together through this, our federal partners, our local partners that are there. And firsthand, we're finding out all the things that are important to our district and to our area, to Maryland, to the Delmarva area, but to our nation. And we really realize how important this port is. It's the 3rd most moving products in the nation. It's the #1 in Ro-Ro. It's roll on, roll off. And I appreciate our partnership with Trade Point Atlantic. They are a true partner, and they are helping us out in this time of need. I want to thank every senator in this committee, but every senator in the Senate of Maryland that have been a partner in this as well. You have been a true partner, but a good friend. And we cannot do this without us working together as a team. So again, Mr. President, I thank you for your leadership. Madam Chair, I thank you for your leadership, and I thank you for this opportunity. And what was already said has filled everything else, as the President has said. So if you do have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer, and I will be here also for budget and tax as serving for their committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, President. Do I have any questions for either the president or for Senator Song? Senator Hershey?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senate President. Thank you very much. My colleague from our caucus, thank you as well for your hard work. Just a quick question to make sure I fully understand when you're talking about the individual income replacement programs, providing temporary relief. That is required to be paid back at a period of time.
So there are paid back provisions that are in effect only if an insurance program or another federal program fills that exact same need. So this is to avoid the case in which a subsequent insurance payment would be dispersed to an affected individual or entity, and then that provision makes sure that there's no double payment.
Okay, so the intention is there would not be a double payment if something, if a employee or a business to be reimbursed from some other form, they'd be required to pay this back.
Only if it were the exact same purpose,
The
right?
exact same purpose. And then just another thing, I don't want to get too technical, but we talked about, and you'd mentioned that the port is not closed,
Correct.
right? But it is severely reduced operations, yet in a few locations in the bill, it talks about the closure of the port to be necessary for these replacement programs to take place. Does that need to be changed, or we just are going to understand that that's what we are meaning when we talk about the closure of the port?
It's as though Senator was in the Moore administration. No, it's a great flag. One of the amendments that was provided by the Department of Transportation was exactly that. It is changes from closure to disrupted operations.
That's great. Well, you can let the Secretary of Transportation know that I heard him say that
You're
yesterday in his briefing to legislators. So that's where I
Yes.
had heard that from. Thank you very much, Mr. President
Thank you.
and Senator Sally.
Senator Klasmeyer has a question.
Mr. President, your third amendment, the flexibility to run the program. Can you give me some examples of that flexibility?
Yeah, so and actually it's, the automotive industry is actually probably one of the most acutely but interestingly impacted with the port. I mean, the Port of Baltimore is one of the largest exporter importers for roll-on, roll-off automobile and light truck vehicles. And so the closure of the channel has made it enormously difficult. You can't bring a barge ship in. However, there is the possibility of having the roll-on, roll-off cargo ships offload onto a barge and then be able to offload at Trade Point Atlantic for a temporary period. Obviously, that would likely create an increased cost because now you're introducing a new process in the system. And so, that is something that could be avoided if the ship were to go to Norfolk or were to go to another location. But there might be opportunities as we sort of see the impacts to help defray some of those costs to make sure that when the channel is reopened, things are done to make sure that business stays in Baltimore.
So I guess in other words, every day you might be a little bit more flexible.
That's the challenge.
About something else.
And there's great news now that it looks like a temporary secondary throughput channel. There we go. A secondary channel is going to be accessible. It won't be a 50-foot berth, but it'll be probably 20 feet, which will allow for deeper barges. So we're learning more each day. It's very complicated, but that's why we wanted to give Commerce some flexibility that for these reliable customers of the port that have really are the basis of why the jobs exist there, that they remain and see the port as competitive.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And Senator Hayes, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. President. In our bill folder, there's some testimony from the Maryland nonprofits, and they talk about like the infrastructure to be able to respond long-term. I'm assuming that that's handled in other cases, not necessarily to this bill. I'm not sure if you had the chance to see their testimony, but I know there's other ways in which the nonprofits can be of assistance and in partnership with the state. I wonder if you want to speak to their testimony that's favorable with the amendment.
Thank you, Senator. I have not had a chance to review it. I was provided right as I was walking through the door, so I haven't had a chance to review it and don't want to speak off cue, although I will say it has been remarkable how many nonprofits and others have stepped forward to be a part of the building back in a stronger way. And so we look forward to all of the ideas and thoughts and support and assistance that may be offered.
Gotcha. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Senator Lamb.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this bill. I appreciate you highlighting the fact that we kind of learned from prior episodes and now are providing some relief to small businesses, trade associations to be able to help them retain their employees so they don't have to lay them off and whatnot. Is there any tracking mechanism available to make sure that those funds that are being provided to those associations and companies are actually reaching those employees?
Yes, so the Department of Labor has been working diligently over the last 6 days trying to set up a lot of these programs. I do think that they learned a lot from the audits of the COVID programs and have been utilizing those as part of the systems and processes for designing anything that would go forward with these programs or subsequent federal programs. I will say the day on Wednesday of last week, I spoke to Secretary Wu, who's just been doing a phenomenal job and was with the federal government previously in designing programs that are targeted at making sure it is as easy as humanly possible for the individual affected worker, Marylander, to be able to access funds lawfully and appropriately. And so it has been a laser-like focus. They've already stood up a new enhanced call-in line for unemployment insurance. And so they are recognized that the toll that is that can be created when those systems are not effectively put in place and when they're not accurate. And so I have a great deal of faith in the secretary to design a system. Obviously, as a legislature, we have to make sure and have oversight over that, which we will. But I have confidence that they're really acting in the appropriate ways here.
And I appreciate the oversight piece, particularly when, we audit these programs and we, want to make sure that we try to get ahead of the problem before we come back and find audits and findings and such.
Certainly.
And you touched on the fact that, the Department of Labor is really trying to help out at the individual worker level. What's being done at the company or the trade association level to make sure that they're being held accountable? Because you can get at it from both directions, right? And making sure that the folks that are actually receiving the aid actually get the aid that they need. And working with Secretary Wu is incredibly important to do that. The funding is also coming in at the association and company level. What's the accountability there?
I think it depends on which program and which type of funding. There is a fair amount of flexibility in here. For instance, the Small Business Administration just released I think it's a $60 million fund for small businesses up to $2 million per impacted company. Now that will be through the federal process. So the Department of Labor and Commerce have been working jointly on standing up those programs that would flow through the state. In fact, there are, I think, 60 SBA workers that just opened up a temporary location on Clinton Street. And so they are putting people boots on the ground to have those programs stood up. We will replicate a lot of those at the state level, and a lot of these go out in very similar fashions. If there's ideas about how to make sure that the accountability is appropriate, certainly that's something that I would defer to the committee on. I do believe that there's a great deal of thought being put in to make sure that it is going to those who are actually impacted and that it is being passed through appropriately, and that, are there chances that somebody could try to use it fraudulently? Yes. And that's why I think we have the back end systems to go after those folks if they.
So you referenced the SBA process at the federal level, and this could be replicated on the state level.
Those ones are loans. So I do want to say those are loans that are being offered, and that's different. It's a low interest, no interest loan.
Okay.
What's really needed to keep employment is to have grants in place so that it is a payment that can be made. It's not a low interest loan. And then if federal disaster aid comes, it would be backfilled. That's where on the double payment issue, if that federal money is able to come in at some point, the state can act more quickly. And so the federal money could backfill it, but we also have inspector generals and attorney generals and audit processes that I feel very confident we'll be able to deal with it.
I think it's just important to keep in mind that we should keep all the folks accountable that are receiving these relief dollars. It's really important for them, but also when it comes to companies and trade associations that are receiving the money to do this, making sure that it actually gets to the hands of people who need that help. And so whether that's, the department working later on after the bill's passed or through regulations, I just hate to see us kind of go in and audit and then find out that the relief never actually reached real people. So I think it's important to kind of bear that in mind.
Certainly.
Thank you, President Ferguson and Senator Solling, for being so prompt with the bill. It's such a horrific incident, but it's good that it happened during session so we could respond quickly and do what we need to do to help the workers and the businesses. So
Absolutely. And in Minnesota, they went in a month after the bridge collapse. So Congress passed in 3 days, and then Minnesota came in a month later and had a special session specifically about the bridge. So the chair is exactly right.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're very happy we don't have a special session. I also
agree.
want to mention Senator Solling is here representing Budget and Tax, who's
Yes.
also second on the bill. So thank you both. I see no further questions.
Thank you all.
That ends the hearing on Senate Bill 1188.
Thanks.
So we have one other bill hearing, House Bill 1023. It's a Prince George's County delegate and Montgomery County delegation bill. And I'm not sure who's presenting it. Senator Kramer.
Can I do it here as well?
You can do it from wherever you like, Senator Kramer.
Such an easy one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ben Kramer here introducing House Bill 1023 on behalf of Prince George's and Montgomery counties. The bill makes various changes related to the Washington Suburban Transit Commission. Specifically, the bill repeals the authority of the governing bodies of Montgomery and Prince George's counties to review and approve the contracts and agreements entered into by the Washington Suburban Transit Commission. And it authorizes the WSTC commissioner that serves on WMATA Board of Directors to be reappointed to the board, and authorizes the Secretary of Transportation's designee to attend meetings of the WMATA Board of Directors. I believe you have letters from both the Montgomery Senate as well as the Prince George's County Senate delegations in support of the bill, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I saw the unanimous votes in the House, so thank you for that. Do I have any questions for Senator Kramer on House Bill 1023?
Please.
Seeing no questions, that ends the hearing on House Bill 1023. We're going to take just a few minute break so Tammy can set up our voting for this afternoon. Thank you.